for our Faculty Career Path Series panel, Strategies for Successful Faculty Interviews and Negotiations. I'm Lisa Hospitali. I'm a program manager at the Center for Inclusive Education. One of the programs I manage is the ERACTA Postdoctoral Fellowship, which does focus on the faculty career path. We are very honored to host a distinguished group of faculty representing Stony Brook University, SUNY Old Westbury University, Farmingdale State College, Brooklyn College, and Suffolk County Community College. As active members of hiring committees, our guests bring a wealth of firsthand experience to help you navigate the academic job market and negotiate with confidence. We hope today's discussion offers the clarity and actionable strategies you need for the next stage of your career. Please feel free to put questions in the chat as it's happening. We will monitor those and we'll assist you in getting those questions answered. Moderating today's conversation is Dr. Alfredo Fontanini, who is the chair of the Neurobiology and Behavior Department at Stony Brook University, a distinguished faculty member, as well as a former Raptor mentor. Dr. Fontanini, thank you for being here, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you all for joining us today. And I also want to add my thanks to the panelists. So I would like to start by having the panelists introducing themselves briefly, mentioning what is their professional role, in which institution you're working, and in what capacity you've participated in faculty job searches, either as an applicant or as a committee member. So going alphabetically, I will start from Bill.
Okay. Hi, I'm Bill Gillis. I'm an associate professor at SUNY Old Westbury. I was an Erasmus student myself, or postdoc myself. So I did my PhD at the University of Oregon in molecular biology, and then I focused on developmental biology and cell signaling pathways while working with Jerry Thompson at Stony Brook University. I started at Stony Brook at SUNY Old Westbury as an assistant professor in 2015, and now I'm an associate professor with tenure. So I've served on at least 9 search committees for faculty positions between lecturers and full-time positions, and I'm currently serving on our evolution search. So if anybody's an evolutionary candidate, we are still accepting applications.
Nice. Good also for the plug.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Joyce?
Hi, my name is Joyce, and I'm an assistant professor at SUNY Farmingdale. I actually also did my PhD at Stony Brook University in marine science. So I'm a marine biologist, and I study oysters. I've been on a search committee for the last 4 years. The last 3 have been at my current position, and the last one before that was at my previous position. And we are also doing a search right now for a bioinformatics position.
Oh, Joyce, you're breaking off.
Although that
Joyce?
application is.
Maybe we give Joyce a
Yes,
second and we'll go to
if you
somebody
can
else.
hear me?
You're breaking off. As we recover her, okay. Looks like sorry, we couldn't hear the last 30 seconds because the connections was disturbed. Oh, it appears to be problematic.
Yeah, so so I've been on a search committee for the last 4 years, and the last 3 years were at SUNY Farmingdale. I've also been at a search committee in my previous position at CUNY John Jay.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you. Mariana?
Hi, everyone. I'll apologize. There's construction outside, so if there's background noise, apologize for that. My name is Mariana Torrenti, and I'm at Brooklyn College, which is part of CUNY. Much like Bill, I arrived here in 2015 after an ERACTA postdoc at the University of Pennsylvania. I was promoted to associate professor a couple years ago. And since then, I've been recruited to every committee on campus. And so I'm part of the appointments committee, which is generally the committee that handles applications and job searches for our department. And also when I was looking for my faculty position, I applied to 56 jobs, and so had a lot of experience on the other side of things as well.
Thank you, Mariana. Sean,
Last
last but not least.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sean Tavalli. I'm a professor of geology at Suffolk County Community College. I'm also the chair of physical sciences at the college and president of the mid-level management at the college and former vice president of the faculty association at the college. Been around for almost 30 years, so countless faculty searches, a number of administrative searches, and presidential searches. So lots of background in terms of the search and very little in terms of interviews myself since I've been there for 30 years.
Thank you. Yes, and I forgot to mention that I joined the faculty at Stony Brook in 2008. And over the past 8 years, I've been chair of the department. And my experience with searches, much like Sean, my own search is at this point sadly quite distant in the past. But I've been overseeing searches within the department for faculty tenure track faculty position, non-tenure track faculty position, and lecturers as well as staff. Okay, so I think we can get started. We have grouped our questions as prompts for discussions in what are like the typical 3 areas of a faculty position search, meaning the phase of the search, the phase of the interview, and then when everything goes great and someone gets an offer, the phase of the negotiation. And we received some questions also from the audience, which we will try to prioritize as we go through this different section. Please, hopefully, we will have some time at the end for additional questions. And when it comes to the time, you can either type your questions in the chat, or you can just raise your hand, unmute, and directly ask. We're all very comfortable with this being a fairly fluid format. Okay, so I would like to start with the first question. And this is upstream. So you want to stay in an academic environment, and you are convinced that you want to apply for faculty positions. And so how do you build a strong, stellar portfolio in graduate school or during your postdoc? What are the key cornerstones that you need to put in place before applying to faculty jobs? And if you don't mind, I can continue to go on alphabetic order on the first name. Bill, I can ask this to you.
So at SUNY Old Westbury, we're a primarily teaching institution. We do have a strong expectation of research as well. So you do need to have a research program, but one that's applicable to a smaller institution, which with much lower startup funds. Think 10K would be maybe at most 15K. What you can do with undergraduates and a project that you can see through to completion. It's sort of our startup money is seed money to hopefully eventually get a grant. But the most important thing is having a teaching experience. And so if you do not have teaching experience, teaching as a primary instructor in your classroom, you are going to be put to the bottom of the pile. I'll just tell you that. It's important for you to go out there, and there's plenty of adjunct positions at community colleges, at Stony Brook itself, I'm sure, that graduate TA-ships, while they look great, or they might help a little bit, I should say, they don't look great. It's not the same thing as being the instructor of primary record, and then having those teaching evaluations that you can go back on. The other thing is having a teaching philosophy. So if you don't know what a teaching philosophy is, I believe the Iracta program has some great programs teaching those. That was certainly where I developed a lot of my portfolio, or helped me develop my portfolio. And it should be based upon scientific education. So you should be able to cite sources based which are primary research on pedagogy. That's going to really help your application stand out if you don't just have a generic teaching philosophy saying, I like to teach and I like the Socratic method. Think of specific examples, specific tools that you use in the classroom that help you stand out as an educator, and really reflect on that process. And so I would certainly suggest if you're going out for a smaller public or private liberal arts school that with a teaching focus, get spend the time to be an adjunct. It is it's a lot of work, um, and I know it's adding to an already burdened strat research agenda, but I think it's very important.
Thank you, Bill. Joyce, would you want to provide your perspective?
I completely agree. SUNY Farmingdale is also a primarily undergraduate institute. And similarly, in all the searches we've been doing, if you don't have experience teaching as the primary instructor, that pretty much takes you out of the application for us, because we are looking for people who have experience teaching as the primary instructor.
Thank you. Sean or Mariana, is there anything you would like to add in terms of a different perspective?
So I could echo pretty much everything Bill said, and Joyce. Community colleges are teaching institutions, so there is an expectation of research, but most of the research we do is educational research. But it doesn't mean there are other aspects that we look at. We really like to see when people are engaged in research, how are they bringing that research back to other students? So if you're a graduate student and you had ways where you engaged other undergrads in your research and you can show how you were bringing that back to a classroom, phenomenal. Obviously, we do look for people that have full teaching experience, but we also hire people without when they show us that they have some of this experience. And like Bill was saying, bringing that educational pedagogy back in to their graduate work and showing how, not only did the research, move the needle forward in terms of the science, but they were also engaging other students. That's something that'll win you in the interview.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I would add, so we're in a slightly different boat because we are a primarily undergraduate institution, but we also have we're faculty appointed at the Graduate Center, and so we handle PhD students as well, and so our research expectation is a bit higher. But the two things I would add to create a strong application would be to have some grant writing experience. And so if you could write a fellowship or write some sort of, grant that you can show that you at least attempted, even if it's not funded, right? That kind of what the grant writing beast is about, that it goes a long way. And for us also, that you mentor students in the lab as well. So like in your postdoc, if you don't have undergraduate mentees, please go get some, because it shows a lot like how successful you've been, right? If you can say like, I've worked with so many undergraduates and they were doing this and this and that, and they publish or presented or whatever, and you can show evidence of your success as a mentor in the lab, that goes a long way for us as well.
Thank you. And I can add very briefly the perspective here at Stony Brook. In our recruitments, so our department is affiliated with both the College of Arts and Sciences, where we have a significant teaching mission, and with the School of Medicine, where we teach some of the courses. Regardless, we have a strong emphasis on research. And so in our case, we like to see evidence of experience with teaching, but it is not doesn't put you at the bottom of the pile if you don't have a role as primary instructor. We're evaluating heavily in that sense research, and with research we mean articles that you have published, so your publications, and grants. With regard to publications, I think I want to dispel the myth that for research-heavy institutions, we only look at Nature Science and those journals. The reality is that most of the time, what matters is that you have a, a compelling scientific narrative, and that's what matters. And it's more important that you have two or three or four papers that make an interesting story, like instead of like a big splashy paper in 10 years. And with regard to the grants, I second what Mariana said. And I think the very important part of the grants is not that we want people that carry money here. In fact, that's also another myth. Very often, what happens is that when a faculty position is open, the university is already allocating the budgets for startup, and so there's not a saving if you bring a grant. But what grant experience means the experience of writing and knowing the process and kind of like slotting into a process that in a research career will be very, very important.
And can I just interject that grant writing is also a question in each of our faculty interviews, and your specific experience, what organizations and what specific applications are you planning on targeting? All those are going to be important for teaching positions as well, just not to the same extent.
I mean, also because these days there are so many grants in the educational domain that both, if one devotes equally to research and education, has the opportunity to apply for grants and fund programs in both areas.
Mhm.
Terrific. So for the next question, we can maybe just briefly follow up on what do you think is the biggest challenge in research and how you address that challenge. Anyone wants to jump in? Mariana, I see
Yeah.
you're unmuting.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you want to focus that question a bit more. I mean, the elephant in the room in research right now is the funding, right? Like everybody.
I'm thinking in terms of what are the challenges these days being a postdoc on the job market, and how to persist in your research trajectory despite the challenges. I mean, I can give my perspective. I've had several challenges as a postdoc, as a student, and as a postdoc, to be honest. The lab where I was doing my PhD as a visiting student closed 2.5 years into my PhD. And so I had to wrap up a thesis and look for a postdoc that I was absolutely not prepared to do so and very mature. And the first postdoc that I did was not very successful. After a year and a half, I changed lab. And I mean, certainly fortune helps, but I think at the time was persistence. You need to find an environment that is supportive enough to maintain you through the difficulties. I was lucky enough that at the time I was a postdoc at Brandeis, and despite not being successful in my first postdoc, folks at Brandeis recognized that I had some strength and decided to support me through a second postdoc. And so the environment that you choose is very important because it's the environment that gives you second chances when you need them. And then I was, like many of us, drawn by passion, and I thought to give it all to this second chance, and the second chance worked out fine. So I would say even in difficult times, both personal or environmental, like these ones where there's low funding, it's finding a good environment that supports you. It takes a village to get someone to a faculty job, and persist. I don't know if anyone has additional comments.
Yeah, I mean, I guess following up on your story, I also did two postdocs myself, but it was more My first postdoc, I thought I wanted to go into industry. And so when I realized that that's not what I wanted to do, I looked for a second opportunity that would allow me to teach and kind of get ready for a faculty position, right? So I guess I would add, in addition to persisting, be proactive in searching the opportunities that will lead you to where you want to go, right? And so, um, don't wait for a mentor to tell you what to do. You have to
No.
kind of take things in your own hands.
Also thinking about professional societies too, be involved as much as you can. There's lots of networking that occurs in the professional, whether it's conferences or listservs, they're just great opportunities.
Terrific. Thank you. So moving on to the next, this was also an audience generated question. I'd love to hear about ways to tailor the job search for those that are non-traditional students. This is a very important point, meaning those that went back to school later in life with partners and family, and how we can adjust to a traditional job academic search to basically best align the existing strength with this process. So non-traditional job searches. Who has a personal experience in either evaluating candidate or being a non-traditional? Joyce?
Yeah, I'd like to answer that. So I actually, when I was finishing up my PhD, I had my kids, and so that was actually a really challenging time. I had finished all my experiments, but I was writing, and it was, writing with a newborn, defended when my older son was just like 3 months old. And so I understand the need to stay local. And so my advice would be to be open to the kinds of positions that you would take. Excuse me. I took a position full time at CUNY John Jay, and it was a lecturer position, so it was teaching only. And I was there for a few years. It worked out nicely with the balance of young children. As my children got older, I really missed research, and so I ended up going back to search for a new position where I am now currently, for the research component. So I think that, I think oftentimes we might think that whatever is that first position we land is it. That's it. And I don't think that that's necessarily true for everyone. I think the path isn't exactly straightforward for every individual. But regardless of what you take, really try to keep your foot in the door. So even though it was a lecturer position, I was still doing research as a lecturer there. And so that's how I was able to then switch into my current role.
Terrific. Thank you.
That's it. And this is where I think community colleges really do have a strength if you're really into teaching, because at a community college, the job is what you make it. It is primarily a teaching position. We do expect research, but it's how you fit that in is around your own schedule, and schedules are flexible, right? As long as we're meeting the student needs. Shameless plug for Suffolk Community College. I was fortunate enough to be at the Selden campus, and our Selden campus and our Grant campus have childcare facilities. So it's great to be a parent at the campus and bring your kids to campus. Right, you take a break from the hard work, go visit your kids, and come back to work. It's kind of nice.
Thank you. So what I can say is that in my experience on seeing recruitment and job faculty positions over the past 20 years, basically, there has been a movement toward acknowledging more and more the strength of non-traditional pathways. And so I think I saw it transitioning from a time where I was applying that everything was almost algorithmic, and either you fell into a very patterned sequence or you were an outlier. Now there's much more flexibility, much more acknowledgement that people can go to graduate school late, can go into the private sector, re-enter into the academic, and I think that acknowledges the strength that all these different trajectories bring to an academic community. And so I would encourage everyone who is in a non-traditional pathway to continue, and as Joyce suggests, obviously to be flexible. The flexibility here is the name of the game, particularly if you are constrained geographically. Okay, the next question is, and we're now transitioning to a little bit to the interviews, search and interviews part. We talked about already teaching positions and research positions. And while very seldom is only 100% one of the two, there are different emphasis on one of the two. So how do you approach them differently throughout the application and interview stages? And how do you tailor, for instance, your research statements for either a research focused versus a teaching focused?
Well, I'll take it.
Okay.
It's almost what I said earlier. We really do look for who's going to be bringing different views to the department, to the program. We like to see what research has been done, but more importantly, we like to see how you plan to bring that work to the institution itself. We struggle a lot. For example, in physics, we often will get candidates that really look forward to continuing their work in particle physics at Suffolk Community College. And that's just not going to happen, right? If they can talk about how they can bring that work into the college, into the classroom, and explain how it's going to benefit the students, also recognizing that they still have an opportunity to do the work, whether it's through Stony Brook or Brookhaven Lab. We really want to see how that work is going to influence not only our students, but we also, this will be a real key to it, we also want to see how that research is going to, let's say, invigorate the other faculty. How does it really fit in, and how does it recharge what we have at the institution?
Well, I would actually say we would welcome a particle physicist because we have continued collaborations with BNL, and I think that's a big for smaller institutions like ourselves. We often look very encouragingly at those situations as long as there's an opportunity for the undergraduates to participate in that research as well in some component. And that some of the research can be done on campus. And so if that's bioinformatic analysis of the stuff that you collect at BNL, and if you could take the students down for a day to see how that's done, that's great. And I would also suggest that you do some research and maybe even ask the chair of the department what resources are available, and maybe take a look at what people have done there. So we have a mouse facility and a rodent facility. We can do some pretty good organismal stuff that I don't see at every institution, but I think part of it's doing your research on the particular job that you're applying to.
Thank you. Any other comment?
Yeah, I'll echo Bill's sentiment. It's great that you guys have an animal facility. We don't at SUNY Farmingdale, so that has come up as an issue for a couple of our searches. So
Yeah.
doing your research on what is available, and then again being flexible, because you can do kind of you can do research on the same topic, but you could also consider different models.
Yeah, and I think that this is really the key point, that understanding during your postdoc whether you want to develop your career more in one area or more in the other, and knowing that you can do both, but that there are some limitations. And so if you're interested in combining teaching and research in a liberal arts college, you may want to make sure that the research that you're doing is something that doesn't require a $2 million startup and 8 graduate students to operate your research program, and that's something that can be done very successfully on undergrads. On the flip side, if you want a more research-intensive position, the emphasis needs to be also a little bit on what kind of new technology you're bringing to the department. And so maybe in that case, you do want to emphasize in the application that technological strength that the department may not have and that you would be bringing. Okay, so now pivoting to the interview. So you have now applied to jobs, you submitted your application. Oh, by the way, this was actually an interesting question, and I often wondered this. What is the ideal length of a research and teaching statement before we move into the interview per se? What do you think is their ideal length?
2 pages for a teaching, maybe 3, if you
Yeah,
include citations.
I would say 2 to 3 for the teaching, and then 5 to 6 for the research.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's more or less. I think that's where the consensus. This was also an attendant asked question. Okay,
I
so
would also add to that with the teaching, more examples of how you're actually applying things, not just simple, throwing words at us.
Yes.
Show how you've actually used it and how you implement your teaching strategies.
And think about that when you're picking up adjunct positions. How do you want to incorporate some of these techniques in your teaching? And I'm sure there's great workshops with the CIA still. So look into those.
I will add that we have recorded workshops on our YouTube page for both the teaching statement and the research statement. We will share it with all attendees post today's
wonderful.
panel.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, so now you applied to jobs and you got selected for a Zoom interview. And so how would you recommend preparing a Zoom interview? And what do you think is the difference between a Zoom interview and an in-person interview?
I can comment on this. I mean, I think when I was interviewing, Zoom wasn't a thing, so it was a phone interview, right? Step. And I actually got a list of questions from my doctoral advisor when he knew that I was on the market, and that was very helpful in like getting ready for potential questions and also having questions to ask. And so I would recommend creating such a list such that you could refer to that while you're doing that preliminary interview.
Mock interviews, right? Just a group of friends or colleagues just get together and have them pepper you with questions and you can answer, be able to respond. With Zoom, it's difficult, right? Because you're losing that personality. So you want to try the best that you can to come across as real as possible through that Zoom. It's a difficult situation.
I wanted to add just this is, I think, pretty basic, but really making sure that you are in a setting that is quiet and that it is not a weird setting. Last year we did a search and it was maybe one of the worst Zoom interviews I've ever been on. The person was maybe on their phone, clearly way too close. It was like motion going on. After that, everybody had the same feedback that it was just automatically that was just not successful, just from the way the person presented themselves.
Yeah, and I want to follow up on this point of Joyce. In a Zoom interview, professionalism matters a lot. So you want to present yourself well. If questions were shared beforehand with you, make sure that you're prepared on those questions. When you get the interview, you can ask the person who contacts you if they can share the topic of conversations. It's totally okay. Be prepared. Make sure that you stay within the allotted time and that you touch all the points. Usually, it's not uncommon that at the Zoom interview stage, it's a first process. It's a first stage of interview, and there may be 20, 25 candidates being evaluated. And so you have a committee that is evaluating and that is conversing with 10 to 15 people a day. And it's really important to stay on time, and you don't want to be cut off because your allotted time was passed. And also show awareness of the place that you're interviewing to. Do your due diligence. Know the members of the committee if they were sharing, know what they do, and know what the department does. It's really surprising. I mean, these are obvious things, but already at this stage, these really separate two big groups. Those who don't do those, and they're 90% out, and those who do this and have a chance of continuing along.
Yeah. I love to see when they research our institution and they can talk about the institution and show exactly how they fit in.
Yeah, that's a great high
Yep.
high point when they do that. Okay, so you did your Zoom interview. You were called for an in-person interview. And so often in-person interviews can happen over a couple of days. That could be a presentation for research, a teaching demo, what is called a chalk talk, which is a presentation, an open forum presentation of your research plan. That often happens over a couple of days. It's an intense couple of days. You meet a lot of people, you meet them in one-on-one, you meet them in groups, you have dinners, lots of social interactions at multiple levels, in multiple formats. How do you manage your energy in this process? And how do you ensure that conversation moves smoothly, and when there are group conversations, there's not like those awkward situations of silence?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. You're absolutely right that it takes a lot of energy, and for those of us that are introverts, it's even more draining, the whole process. Um, but I used to take bathroom breaks to kind of recharge for like 5 minutes, take a sip of water, you know, go to my son place, and you can ask for those like often, because you often be one-on-one, and so they don't know how many you've taken, so to speak. Um, but one thing that I think is very important in that process, is to show your true self. You want to be professional, of course, and you want to highlight your strengths and have show energetic, enthusiastic self. But at the same time, you also want to be yourself because you're going to be hopefully at that position for a long time. And so you want your people to know, you want it to be a good fit, right? And so you don't want to be pretending to be somebody else that you're not. And so it's kind of this fine balance of being yourself and being professional and playing to what you think they want to hear. And so it's tricky, but I think it's very important to be yourself above all else, because otherwise it's not going to be a good match. These are colleagues for 20, 30 years. And so you want to make sure that it's a good fit.
Excellent. Any other feedback on this question? How do you manage the energy? You balance this being prepared versus being professional and also being true to yourself. And how would you manage awkward situations when you're meeting with 5 professors and no one is speaking, or everyone is looking at you to break the ice?
So I would say for somebody wrote something about icebreakers and games, but I think it's more important to ask questions about the institution, ask questions about what do you like about the area, where do you live, what do you how is your work-life balance at this institution, or specific questions about individual groups' research. I mean, again, showing that you're going to be a good fit for that group of individuals is the most important part to me. Like and that you have research and you've thought about taking that position at that particular location. I and again, this comes back to like making sure it's realistic for both your own life. Can you fit that with your work-life balance? Can you move to Alabama and be a happy individual? That might tailor your search a little bit. Um, I'd also say, as far as the day of the interview, if you're doing an on-person interview, make sure you carry snacks with you. Maybe like take a bite of a granola bar when you're doing that bathroom break. Usually, you're going to have lunch, and every interview that I did, the lunch was part of your presentation, and so you're sitting there, everybody's trying to talk to you, and you're expected to eat and then you instantly have to go up and present. So make sure that you have like something that keeps your energy up for those 12-hour days. Bring a water bottle as well that you can refill.
Don't eat Philly cheesesteak. That's the biggest piece of advice that I give. And that's what I learned by eating in Texas at lunch during a very hot day, a Philly cheesesteak, and having to give a job talk 20 minutes after. That was a mistake.
Light
I
food,
learned that.
easily
And
digestible food.
yes, exactly. But I think it's very important the point of questions. That's how you break the ice. So two things. Awkward silences happen, but just be aware that on the other side, if a search is run well, the community that is doing the search is structuring all the meetings, is putting the right people in the right meeting to ensure that those awkward silences don't happen. So if there's an awkward silence, don't blame yourself.
Mhm.
It's actually it's telling you something a little bit about the place or about whether that's a good match with the place. So that's information for you to make a mental note for. And then if you have the pressure to be the one relieving the tension of the awkward silence, questions is the best. And that depends on the context. Can be if it's dinner, more like life balance, environmental questions, even some small talk is totally fine. If it's during the day with the graduate students, can be like questions on testing, how engaged they are, and just tailor the questions to the context. Mariana had a phenomenal point. Walk into the bathroom. Oh my God. Like every time, whenever I could in the interview, I would take a little break,
Mhm.
in the break, check a little bit, make sure that I was on top of the bio of the person that I was going to meet next in
Mhm.
such a way that I wouldn't appear like a deer in the headlights when they were telling me about their research, and just refresh your preparedness. And then during the days, there are like ebb and flows in the tension. Sometimes if there's a lunch with grad students, you can relax and you can just be a little bit yourself with the grad students. And by the way, people talk. So we had an experience of a couple of candidates being extremely differential and extremely charming with tenure professors, a little bit less with assistant professors, and rude to staff. That's it.
Oh, yeah.
People talk after you leave.
Mhm.
If you're rude to anyone,
Yep.
you're a rude person. Even more so if you're grading your behavior and your level of respect based on hierarchies. That's a huge red flag. That's a fatal red flag, I would say.
Yeah.
Uh,
I sorry, Joyce.
No, no, go ahead, go
Just
ahead.
a very quick point. I wanted to add also that some of those awkward moments, at least in my looking back in my experience, where you'll show up and the chair's gonna pick you up from the airport, right? And so you have to ride from the airport to the campus for, whatever, 40 minutes, and that's still part of the interview, even though you're tired because you just traveled, and so you have to be ready for those um, things that don't seem like part of the interview, but they are.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
adding
Joyce?
to even in the interview itself, talking to all individuals.
Yeah.
One person might ask you the question, but respond to all people within that room.
Uh,
And it's awesome. Yep, sorry.
Sorry,
I was going to
Joyce.
say,
Joyce had a
go
point.
ahead.
I just wanted to add that while it may not feel like it initially, the interview goes both ways. And so it's also about whether you think you're a good fit with this, whatever place you're interviewing at. So ask the questions that matter to you to get an understanding of whether you would be happy in that position.
That's exactly what I was about to say, and I appreciate that. But I would also say you can ask questions not just about the department, but what do they not like about the department or the institution? What are some limitations that they have? Because you really, it's an interview for you as well.
And this really segues on one of the question. Maybe we can elaborate a little bit more, just for a couple of points, a couple of minutes, on what are actually good questions to ask. What are the good questions not to ask as well? So we're talking about the first interview.
Hmm.
So the
Oh,
in-person.
during the Zoom interview.
No, after the Zoom,
Okay.
you're on site and you haven't received the offer there. You conceivably you're one of 4, 5, 6 candidates. What are the good questions to ask at that point?
Can I see my lab space?
What
Yeah,
courses would I be teaching?
yeah,
And what expectations beyond teaching?
yeah,
What are the general expectations for tenure?
Yeah.
yeah. Mentoring committees as well. Does your department have a mentoring committee?
Hmm.
That's an important one. It's not yet appropriate at uh, until you have an offer to discuss salaries and startups.
Hmm.
That's not the time where you talk money or resources, unless directly asked by and prompted on the conversation by the chair. These are also usually conversations when it comes to money that are had and prompted only by the chairs. Just be aware it's a little bit of a delicate area.
Hmm.
Another good question is the way you phrase it too. Uh, are there other opportunities for me to be involved at the institution?
Yeah,
Right. So you're not just looking at, am I, for a teaching college, am I just coming in and teaching? I want to know that you want to be involved at all levels of this institution. How
Hmm.
you phrase that is very important.
yeah, yeah. So I'm seeing a lot of, and I apologize if I wasn't typing. I see many questions here in the chat and some questions raised. And so for the sake of actually having this panel interactive, I'd be very happy to kind of make it open also to Q&As. And so if you have questions, maybe we can break the flow and open to your questions, and then we can go back to some other prompts that we have if there's an awkward silence. We put in practice solving the awkward silence with the questions. Okay, so I see a hand raised by Henal. Would you want to ask your question, Henal?
Hi.
I hope I pronounced it correctly.
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So I have like two, three questions, but I would go with the first is what are the salary ranges usually university offers? Because this is I really do not know being a postdoc. Um, and then what is the right time to negotiate that?
Yes. So there's a more general issue to that question, if I may add. Who you ask these difficult questions
Yes,
before the interview, right? How do you get to that information? I mean, if there's a panel like this, you can ask us. But
yes,
if there isn't, who can you ask?
So
yeah,
Panel?
you can go to See Through New York and see anybody at a public institution in New York. Look up individual names of faculty, and if it's an assistant professorship, you can look to see who's the newest hire and what their salary is. They're usually going to give you the same salary or a similar salary to their last hire, maybe slightly bumped for inflation, depending on how long the time has been. Um, But yeah.
Um,
Yes, go ahead, Mariana.
yeah, so for us, we're unionized, right? So all the salary tables are actually published. And so you can certainly find that information. Um, but I wouldn't ask until an offer.
And
Yeah,
yeah, wait until the offer, and you can negotiate. I negotiated my starting salary.
I couldn't because of the union.
Yes,
That
some of ours are a little difficult too because we have strict formulas and where you're placed on a salary schedule. So it's
okay.
I want to say that you should always try. Uh,
Yes.
I did it for when I joined CUNY, I negotiated for a little bit more. And when I joined SUNY, I actually did also negotiate for a little bit more. It wasn't a lot, but every little bit does count because it's your starting salary. And that's kind of the only time you've got to really try and negotiate. And so it's always worth trying. And I have to say, I would not have done that if I was not going through the process under the guidance of my PhD advisor.
Mhm.
I was talking to him, telling him about what the situation was and what the pay was, and because he was more experienced, he really pushed me to be like, hey, you should expect more in this, or and there's different ways to negotiate, not only salary, it could be time or space, or there's other ways, I think.
And you should absolutely negotiate if you can, because everything else. So my raises are set in the union. So except for a very, very, very tiny bit of discretionary stipends, that's built into the system, unless you get a new job and then you can renegotiate based upon a retention package.
So take also into account the structure of the position. A salary could be for the academic year,
Hmm.
in which case it's not a 12-month salary, it's a 9-month salary. And typically in a structure like a College of Arts and Sciences or a liberal arts college, you're paid on 9 months, and then the summer you can supplement your salary from grants prorated at your yearly salary, or there's an upper bound. So that's in a classical, it's academic year, or like 9+3. In the context of a medical school, salaries are on 12 months, but it is not uncommon that medical schools request a portion of your salary coming from your grants. And
Hmm.
so you may want to ask, what is the portion of that, of your salary that has to come off your grants? And what happens if you don't have grants? Is your salary covered 100%, or is covered only at, say, like 75%? So those are details. Uh, for a lot of the public schools, as Bill was saying, it's public information,
Hmm.
and negotiate up. Be graceful in negotiating. Like
Yes.
I think the way I like to think a negotiation is actually not as a tug of war where two sets of interests are conflicting, but the beginning of a match and on a partnership toward each other's success. And I know that sounds Pollyannish, but it's really like I believe that you're molding the relationship with your chair during that phase of a negotiation. And so you can ask, but how you ask matters. And also, if your chair can't, very often there are equity or union boundaries that don't really depend on the department, on the chair. And so ask, by no means ask, but also be prepared that if you can't, it's not a matter of pushing more. It's just some boundaries.
Okay.
So can I add a little bit on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so when I was negotiating with the chair of the department and the dean. And I got a lot of no's from the dean, but the department kind of jumped in and with their discretionary funding kind of massaged the situation and not, so we couldn't negotiate on the salary because that was union dictated, but we could negotiate on summer salary, the amount of years that my startup would last, things like that. And so actually with the amount of years that my startup would last, it was kind of funny because I requested 5 years and they told me three, but ultimately I ended up with six later on. So just because something is set and then a negotiation doesn't mean that you can't request things later on. So, within reason, right? So like we hit COVID and all these things, right? And so like extensions were granted because of those circumstances. But my point was that, if you don't get it at first, you can ask later and maybe you will, be successful at a later point as well.
Okay.
And be aware that you can always ask. So for instance, I think I did not have access to it, but I think I saw that 2 or 3 years ago, at least in neuroscience, there was a Slack channel for postdocs where postdocs on the job market would share tips, information, and whatever was available, and these kind of questions that the question that you wouldn't dare asking during the interview. So I don't know if in your field there's something like that. That would be something useful. You won't rely a lot on your advisor. Ask them those questions on salaries. Be aware that a state school or a community college or a city university have different scales from private universities. And so that's usually happens. They usually come with better benefits on the other end that offset this difference. But ask your friends, ask your advisor, ask the colleagues of your advisor if you have a mentoring committee in your university or in your postdoc position. Ask for those questions.
Also, I know a lot of people, obviously, we focus on the salary quite a bit because we all need to eat. But always consider the benefits, right? There are a lot of those hidden benefits that you might not realize, whether it's the health insurance or other dental, eye, optical, and conference money, all the other things that are included in there that you might not necessarily consider as salary, but is definitely part of the package.
And it also depends on fields, right? If you're in economics, salary are higher than, or if you're in computer science, salary are higher than if you are in biology or in liberal arts and humanities. It is very similar also with regard to the startups. Startups vary widely. Be aware that when you ask people about startups, like peers or near peers about startup, there's a little bit of flexing going on, and people like to see the biggest to tell the biggest number possible. Startup may include part of salary money, renovation money, research money. So anytime you talk about you have a conversation about startups, try to understand what is the definition of startup. If that's only your research money, and there's big differences depending on the institutions, but the best you can do to advocate for yourself is to be prepared and have a spreadsheet where you have a good rationale for the funds that you could be requesting. And those, if you are applying for a research position and you have an $800,000 microscope that is going to be the backbone of your research, people will have to acknowledge that, and that will limit your options in where you can go, but that's what you can need. And if it's well rationalized, instead, if you say, oh, I need $1.5 million, and then you're fluffy in trying to explain why you need that money, well, that is harder to sustain.
Okay. This was really helpful. Thank you so much. I have two more questions, but I don't want to take much time just for my questions because I see there are a lot of people who have many questions. So I quickly ask, like, what is the more weightage to get selected for these positions, like for publication versus already funded proposals? Like being a postdoc, I am writing a lot of proposals, and if those get funded, what is the more weightage for the selection criteria for the proposal versus publication versus teaching experience? Like, I don't have any teaching experience, so I am always worried, like, how much does it matter? And should I look forward to building those ability to show in my CV while my next 1 2 years to look more competitive and get selected? And also for the
Okay.
publication, what matters a lot, like number of publication versus if I have 1 or 2 publication which are Nature or like highly prestigious journal published research like Nature or Science, what does matter most? My
Okay,
other,
so
okay.
maybe we can tackle the first question first that we touched upon earlier, which is how how do you weigh your CV when you have or you don't have teaching experience and research experience?
Yeah, okay.
And then we can get to the papers and publications versus grants.
Okay.
Any comment?
Yeah, it really depends on the institution that you're targeting and how much one thing matters. Yeah, so it's very dependent on where you want to go.
Any other feedback?
I do also want to add the concern about teaching. If you can't fit in adjuncting wherever you are in your life right now, something else to consider would be sort of teaching workshops. Those can be just a day, couple hours, right? But it shows that you are developing yourself professionally in that way.
Yeah, I agree with Joyce a lot. And then also that mentoring in the lab, so that you're kind of killing two birds with one stone, right? Like if you can teach in the lab, you can say I mentored however many undergraduates or graduate students or whatever. That can also be spun as teaching as well.
And I think you got the sense from the panel, right? I mean, we represent a different type of institutions. And so if you're applying for a primary teaching a college position where teaching is going to be the cornerstone of your work, you need to have some experience in that. And so if what you want to do is to continue with more emphasis on education, you should build on that part. If on the other hand, you are a little bit more focused on a research intensive environment, you can do exactly what Joyce suggests. Take some workshops so that you can write a statement that is not wishy-washy and not just aspirational, but that actually has content, and then focus on the research, and whether if it's better one Nature or four other journals. At the end of the day, it depends on time. If it's a one Nature over 8 years, that's a lot of time for one paper. People will be worried that you may not be able to publish enough in time for tenure. It depends on how many authors. If you're the first of a 2 authors Nature paper, that means something. If it's a 20 authors Nature paper, it means something else. And at the end of the day, it really matters the quality of research. I like to believe that we still live in a world where search committees are not really just looking at shiny objects of fancy journals, but they're looking at the quality of a research statement, your substantial contribution, the thoughtfulness of your project, and the quality of your papers. I personally, if you ask me, I weigh more 3 or 4 continuous contributions during a postdoc, because as a chair, I'm much more relaxed in knowing that you will be publishing over the next 5 years, 3 to 5 papers that will put you in a good position for tenure. Whereas betting that you will publish a Nature paper, it's a much riskier bet that is going to keep me more up at night.
Okay, thank you. And one more question is how,
One more.
yeah,
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
No,
Uh,
no, no, I'm saying just one so
okay.
that we open to the others too.
Yeah, this is the last one. Like, um, we usually talk about work-life balance, but I do see with the professors whom I am working right now, and also I previously worked during my PhD time, that they literally work more than the hours they are paid for. They have a lot of workload, and I honestly ask every time, do this position really give a professor, doesn't matter in what career positions they are in, a liberty to balance their work life actually? So I wanted to ask you, like, is it possible to really manage it in that way since you all are already in those positions?
I could start with that. It's one of the problems with academia is the flexibility and how you manage that flexibility. So it's a difficult situation, but there is a work-life balance. It's just depending on how you're going to balance it. If you're going to spend all of the time in the lab and not manage your work life, then that's where you're going to spend your time.
Um, so work-life balance is incredibly important for me. I have two children who are still young. I told you that when I started my previous position, they were really little, still in preschool. So I think it does depend on the position. This is really a large reason why I was looking for a primarily undergraduate and more of a teaching heavy institute to be at. Because just like you, when I was, when I was a graduate student, I looked at my advisor and I said, I don't want that life. That's just too much for me. I couldn't handle it. So I think that, whether it's balanced, yeah, I think to Sean's point, there's flexibility, right? And that part is nice. I will admit that, yeah, I still do work at night, and sometimes weekends. I try not to with the weekends, but that sometimes happens. But don't forget that for me, I'm also now considered an early career because I switched positions. So I'm in that process of getting tenured still, and so um, you know, maybe Bill or Sean's perspective is a little bit different from mine.
Yeah, so that's a never-ending struggle. I have three kids, and so it's always, picking them up from school, homework, taking care of them while also taking care of the lab and the teaching and the service and the committees and all these other stuff we had to do. But I find that I work a lot, but a lot of it is self-inflicted because I want to see the things completed, right? I want to see that paper completed. I want to see that committee be successful. I want to see. So in some ways, it's kind of fulfilling to work, work Saturdays, work evenings. And I think a lot of it also is getting very creative. So, there's chunks of life that you have to really get things done for whatever reason, be tenure, be a certain deadline or whatever, a grant deadline or whatever's going on. And then, I tend to wake up early in the morning before my kids do and get some work done early on, and then by the time they get up I already at least done some stuff, and so you get creative and figure out what works best for you, but you also at the same time have to protect what's important, and we have that ability to do so, so you should have to figure out what's important to you.
I,
And not forgetting too that it's for many of us, they're 10-month positions, right? So there's downtime, and then we're squeezing a lot of work into a shorter period of time.
uh,
Okay.
can I just
But
add
so,
one other thing?
yeah.
Which is this might be important to you then when you are searching to really understand if the department is, family friendly, if that's what you mean by work-life balance. I know that my department is, and this means that sometimes when my kids are on break and I'm not, I bring them to my office. Sometimes they've had to sit through my lectures. and kind of merging the work. Sometimes if I'm out doing field work, I will take the kids with me, and they kind of love that actually.
Yeah, and in this sense helps a lot, like the questions that you asked during the interview, like what are the expectations for tenure, right? Different places have, I feel like before tenure, you're more externally paced than after tenure. After tenure, you're still externally paced, but you're a little bit slightly more in control. And so it's important that you ask questions regarding the expectation for tenure. And there are, for instance, some places that expect a large number of grants and places that expect a more balanced portfolio between, grants and teaching. And so you can gauge that. I want to also like make the point that your PI, like PIs always look overburdened, over busy. And sometimes I get in the lab and like, oh, what a day. Uh, but this is a wonderful job. It's a very fulfilling job. It's a job that keeps us very busy, but we want, as Mariana was saying, be busy because we find great meaning in this job. It's a job where you can be busy in very different areas, and it's easier, to shift from one area or another. And so don't be discouraged if your PI seems frustrated, because one of the mistakes that we make as PIs is sharing the frustrations and not necessarily sharing the moments of joy with the lab. And so you have like a little bit of a bias in seeing us always overly stressed. Okay, so we have two questions.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. You have two questions. Sam, you
Yes.
want to ask your question?
Yes. Thank you so much. So thank you all to all of you panelists for taking the time to share your insights and experiences during today's panel. We sincerely appreciate it. I have a very quick question. As a non-traditional student with a broad range of research and teaching experience, I will need to craft like a really clear narrative that connects my diverse experiences into a cohesive whole when applying. But this narrative is going to be different, right? Depending on the position and department I'm applying to, particularly because, like, just for example, my research work sits at the intersection of like health psych and social epi and data science communication, as well as different types of jobs. So my question is like, what advice do you have for officially structuring application materials so that, we can accurately, quickly, and strategically tailor them for each position? I know Dr. Terente mentioned applying for 50 over positions, and given the really difficult nature of the current job market, many of us will need to adapt our materials repeatedly. So just any strategies you can recommend for managing like this level of customization effectively across many different applications?
I can't think of any time effective thing. It unfortunately is a very time consuming endeavor. I had tailored statements for each application. And I was somewhat, not quite as like as different as yours, but I applied to biology and chemistry positions because I'm a biochemist. So tailoring to those two, and bringing in, I think is very important what Sean mentioned earlier, to bring in like potential collaborations that you can have with people in that department. So there's really, unfortunately, not any way that I know of to like really make it like plug and play. You really have to spend the time. And so I wouldn't recommend applying to as many as I did. I was following advice from my postdoctoral advisor, which are an R1 institution, so it's a different thing. In primarily undergraduate institutions, you're very constrained by the academic year. So all the interviews happen in the fall. So I actually had to turn down interviews because there weren't enough slots to schedule them. And so I wouldn't necessarily recommend applying to so many, even though it's certainly a reality that the job market's very competitive. But I don't know of any way to make it efficient. It's very time consuming, but it's, the way it is, I think.
Um, I would say in most of my life, my service work and everything else, I make heavy use of AI. Even in my teaching and advising my students how to learn. But I would certainly say you could do things like put in your research statement and your teaching statement and say, how does this reflect, how does this align to the different research priorities of this department? Can you give me an overview of some of the background work that they're doing? You can ask really sophisticated questions, especially I know we have the enterprise level Copilot edition, and that works really well for these kind of things. That's a tool that might make things a little bit more streamlined or might give you a starting point to tailor your applications a little bit more.
I'll also add, just thinking about where you're applying, I think back to what Joyce said is, are you applying to places just because they have an opening and you need a job, or is it a place that you really want to work? Right? Because if it's an institution that you want to apply to, you're going to find a way to sell yourself to that institution. I wouldn't go too far trying to force myself into a department and going out of the way and trying to make it look good, because sooner or later you are going to be at the interview. So you have to be careful of what you're writing and how you're selling what you are.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Do we have other questions from the audience? I saw Jonathan unmuted.
Yeah, I had a question. I think it's more just like when you're looking at applications and applying to programs. You know me, I'm a neurobiologist, so obviously biology is a good fit, but how flexible is it to apply to different departments like biochemistry or, let's say I was coming to Stony Brook and I was like, I want to go to the Department of Anesthesiology.
I think the best way to identify the department, your target department, is just to look at the roster. Biology can mean many different things in many different places. And so just look at the faculty and get a sense. If you see faculty that you would like to have as collaborators, chances are that that's a good department. So in my case, the work I do sits at the interface between neurobiology and psychology, and so I applied a bit half psych and half neuroscience departments. And yeah, so generally look at the roster. That is very helpful. Also, that's also an important, the art of reading the ads. Ads often provide some important information of what the department is looking for. And if they're very broad, then you don't know. But if there are some subjects that are specified, that may mean that the department is expanding in that area. And so even if you don't have necessarily a lot of collaborators that are doing the things that you do, maybe that department is looking into expanding in this area, and you could be the one enucleating this expansion. So
yeah, that kind of goes into my follow-up question. I guess, should you be looking at departments that do the same things you do? Like, if they have nobody in the department that studies neurodegeneration and you study neurodegeneration, is it better to apply to that department being distinct, or is it better to apply to a department that's like everybody studies neurodegeneration?
Oh, it's a philosophical question.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if it sounds like you're talking about more like research intensive institutions, but in primarily undergraduate, I think generally there's one of each flavor. And so you're likely not going to be one of many, whatever you are. And so that's something to think about.
Also, keep in mind the departments change over time. And what are the conditions? Are you going to be one because they just need one person? Or you're going to be one because you're going to be the first of a cluster? Or how collaborative are the people? Because maybe you are the one that does that specific thing, but will end up, it's the missing Lego piece to build the bridge. And so those are things that you discover much more organically during the interview, during the visit in person.
And if you're looking at a teaching institution, you're going to be doing more than just one thing. So if you're applying to Suffolk, for example, I need to know that you're going to be able to teach the whole breadth of classes that we offer within the program, right?
I wanted to add also, it could be the size of the department as well. Sometimes smaller departments, you'll get a mix, even though it's biology, you'll have the neurobiologist, the cell biologist and so forth, all in the same department. So it may also depend on that as well.
Thank you.
So following up on something that Sean mentioned, there's a question that I don't see we answered in the chat from Alexander, and it is, how do you pitch yourself as ready to teach in specific subject areas if your teaching experience, especially as an instructor of record, hasn't yet covered those areas? Right, I think this is a good point. You want someone that is an instructor of record, their instructor of record in a course on genetics, but the position will involve them teaching about neurobiology. How do you advise the student or the applicant bridging that gap?
So I can tell you in my tenure at Suffolk, we have hired people with no teaching experience, but who came to an interview and showed their ability to teach. And I think that's the real crucial point, is looking at, usually if you're going for, if there's going to be a teaching demo, we're going to tell you what that demo is on. So you're going to have plenty of time to think it through. And a lot of times, even seeing somebody who's never taught it before teach it is very interesting, right? Because you come at it from a different angle. And as long as you're going to get that point across, and we're going to see that you have the ability to be that flexible, that's a wonderful thing, because I'm going to ask you to teach many different areas, and knowing that you're going to come into a teaching demo and engage this committee, so that I see that you're looking at us as students and you're going to be acting as you would within a classroom, as long as what you're saying is correct, which I hope you would study before you got there, and we can show that you are engaging in the classroom and can teach the material. I think it's a good start.
Thank you. Any other feedback on this? Any other perspective? If not, we can move to the next question. Lisa.
Hi, it's just a quick question related to what was just said. So when the applicant is given materials about the teaching demo, so when you're telling them what should be in that demo, what does that look like?
I mean, in my experience, it was very broad. It's like, cover this topic. And glycolysis was extremely popular for whatever reason. I guess it can get challenging. And so, yeah, it was do a session in glycolysis, 40-minute session or however long. That was about all I got.
And I know from my past experience, we've typically chosen topics that we know students struggle with. And we're just going to see how you approach it. But again, it would be a broad topic, and we just want to see where you take it.
Cool, thanks.
Go ahead, Joyce.
Oh, so I was going to add that it does depend on the time that you're allotted as well. So you can feel free to ask your committee what might the students have already expected to have gone over prior to entering this lecture, because you don't want to spend all your time on background. Sometimes the teaching demos are not, it's frequently not a full course period. And so you may have to kind of just zone in on a couple of topics. If, they go photosynthesis, but you're like, okay, well, have they learned about, I don't know, respiration yet, right? Because if they have, then they've been exposed already to like electron transport chain, so you don't have to go in depth in the same way. So I think that you can ask for clarification from your committee.
On that note, you could also say that's where you're starting from, right?
Mm-hmm.
The assumption is I've already covered these materials and this is where I'm beginning.
Yeah, one other thing that comes to mind is that for some of my interviews, there was no teaching demo per se, but the research talk was to undergraduates. And so it was kind of a mix of both. And so if that's happening, make sure that you mix in the teaching techniques into your research talk as well.
So
Very
this is,
interesting. Thank you.
oh no, go ahead.
Just a thank you.
Oh, okay. So this is something that we haven't covered much yet, and it is about the chalk talks. So when you do your visit, depending on the type of institutions that you're applying to, you may have to give a research talk, a teaching demonstration, or what is so called a chalk talk. It's not uncommon that you have to do two, like the public seminar and then either the research chalk talk or the teaching demo. The chalk talk is a difficult beast. It's supposed to be very dynamic. It's something that there's no perfect preparation because there's no two chalk talks that are the same. Different places have different cultures. And the advice that I give is prepare a presentation that has a very brief summary of your seminar, very brief, not too long. You don't want to relitigate your seminar, but just like recap your seminar for those who were not present, and then go through what you think are the aims. If this is in a research intensive university, the aims for an R01 or for like a large grant. This is in science and in a science research intensive department, and then be ready to the back and forth. So the best way to train for the back and forth is to give many of these chalk talks. As always, make mental notes. You get out of, you're not the only one who's being examined. Also, the environment is being examined by you. And so if you're giving a research presentation or a chalk talk or even a teaching demo, and you don't like the way the faculty interact with you, it doesn't feel constructive, feels more antagonistic, that's a big piece of information on the culture of the environment. During those back and forth exchanges, people tend to be more focused on asking the questions than on acting. And so they show themselves for the culture that they embody. Pay attention to that culture because it tells you a lot. In fact, I had one job candidate 2 or 3 years ago who told me that she paid always a lot of attention before the chalk talk and after the chalk talk, how people would interact each other. Because she mentioned that there are often moments that are unscripted, people are spontaneous, and you see how your environment, the department shows itself in those settings. So that's something that worth keeping in mind. So is there any other question from the audience? If not, we can talk a little bit with the panel about what are the pitfalls, the mistakes to avoid during the interview process, and on the contrary, what makes an applicant stand out during the application process.
Well, I can talk about a recent job search in the two stumbles that people made. One candidate was talking about his research with undergraduates, and then he said he didn't remember his undergraduate's name. And so after that, yeah, things did not go too well. And then the other question that I've seen people stumble in is, during the chalk talk type situation, they've been asked, what's the first experiment you would do in your lab? And more often than not, people have not thought about that question. And then the people that impress, on the contrary, in the other end of things, they've thought about that question. They know what they're gonna do, what their first milestones are that they want to hit, and like where they're gonna potentially publish things, submit grants to. They really research, kind of the rest of us and know what we have done and say kind of, things from our backgrounds, I guess. And so showing that they really have looked into the institution. And so that's what I've seen.
I think when reviewing the applicants, even before getting to the Zoom interview or in-person interview, just knowing the institute is so important. We have so many applicants who talk about working with graduate students, and I mean, their research looks amazing, but we look at the application and we just don't think this is what they're looking for. We don't even have graduate students where we are. So it's really important that you really like do the research on what kind of institute you are applying for. And then to that point, on the flip side, like Mariana says, if you've done the research to really understand and have an idea of the kinds of students that you will be interacting with, that is a big plus. Understanding them and thinking about how you're going to support these students in their academic and research careers.
Yeah. Another important point, I think, is showing interest, right? Or the contrary, not showing interest. I know that there's been discussion on what is the proper etiquette. I think, for instance, well, we discussed about being aware of what goes on in the department, appearing interested and motivated, asking questions that show your excitement for the place. It's important to stand out. And then follow-up emails. I'm a big fan of follow-up emails. You may want to have, like, just shoot a little note to the people you interviewed with. You may want to send a thank you note to the people that helped you with the logistics. It's just a nice thing to do. There's a lot of work behind an interview, and everyone from the staff to the faculty and the students, and that matters. Shows someone who's thoughtful, who's caring, and who's interested in a place. The flip side, if that doesn't happen, the first thing that people start asking each other is, did you get an email from? And when the answer is uniformly no, you're like, maybe they were not that interested in the department. And that's, unless you want to give that message. If you don't want to give that message, that's something that you may want to avoid. Okay.
Can I ask something?
Oh, absolutely.
So just a follow-up note on that. Really how important a thank you notes are. Because in my experience, I've gotten a double reaction. In some interviews, I've tried to send thank you notes. In some, I've been invited for second rounds, and in others where I've not, in interviews where I've sent thank you notes, I've not been invited back. And then for those ones where I haven't sent thank you notes, I have moved to the second steps in the process. Really, how really is it a big deal if the candidate is really good?
And the answer is that in a healthy situation, you're being evaluated holistically, right? So not single thing is a deal breaker. And so if you were engaged, like if 9 of the 10 things were right, doesn't matter if one it's dropping. Likewise, it's not that if you send a thank you note and was not a good match with the needs of the department, that thank you note turned around. I tell you, like the way I interpret as chair, notwithstanding, like if I have a sense that someone didn't telegraph a lot of interest during the interview, right? That they seem normal, and then I don't get a thank you note, it's two clues toward a lack of interest for the place. If on the other hand, someone I know that they were interviewing in many places, were busy, and they seemed incredibly engaged, that may be less important. But I also want to disclose that whenever I'm invited to give a talk, I always follow up with a thank you note, even if it's not a job, not on the job market. Thank God.
And
I always send a thank note for the person who invited me, and if I, like I had some meaningful conversation, I always thank you the staff person who managed the logistics of my visit. I think it's just like pleasant, creating an environment of pleasant interactions. It's
and
not
what
a
should be
big
our
deal, it
expectation?
helps.
And what should be our expectation from these messages? Because most of them, the truth is they don't reply back. Does that mean, yes, they don't reply back. Does that mean that they try to avoid to appearing to be talking back doors with the candidate? Or does it, and what should be the balance? Because sometimes
Okay,
we think
so,
that
so
you're
this
trying
is
to push it
this is an
hard.
important. Yes, so the issue is this doesn't need to become a way of somewhat prying some information on how did I do. Okay, no one is going to tell you how you did, because people are actually bound not to tell you how you did. It's a search committee and needs to be managed in a way where there's not privileged information that is being given. Also, people have their impression, but they don't know really how you did, because they're outside of the committee, and there are many other discussions that they're not privy about. And I usually tend to reply to a thank you note with it was a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for coming, and we will keep you appraised as the process moves on. So I try not to show any commitment that would be inappropriate, but I try to signal back that there was a pleasant interaction and that I'm grateful that the candidate showed interest in the department. It's not an algorithmic thing, right? Also, as an applicant, I think it's very important. Don't read too much. It's a system with a lot of noise. People are very busy, and they see your email because when they're going to pick up their kids at daycare, checking the email and say, "Oh, that's so nice, I should reply." And then they don't reply at the moment, and another 20 emails come in. So don't read too much. I think it's the bottom line is that you want to show interest in the place. Just showing interest is not going to get you in the place, but showing an interest, with everything being equal, the person who shows the most interest edges over the one that doesn't show interest, with everything being equal. Does it make sense?
Yes. Thank you so much. I like that.
Okay. Do we have other questions from the audience? If not, I want to open up to a topic that I think it's important, and despite the fact that I think the situation has changed a lot over the past, I would say, 20 years from when I was on the job market, it is still an area where a lot of work needs to be done. Does gender play a role in the negotiation process? And if so, how? And do you have any tips for dealing with gender bias during the negotiations? Or the interview, we can extend it to the interview as well. Panelists, what's your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a reality not only of academics, but of society in general, right? Like certain things are more acceptable from males and females, right? Like they're perceived in different ways, like assertive versus not, uh, versus being difficult, and that's a reality of the society we live in. I think in some of my interviews, I think being a mother was kind of looked negatively, and obviously that's not a place that you want to be at if that's your situation. And so the way I say is that it's a reality. It's more of a thing in some places than others, and you want to go to a place that it's less so. And I think it continues to be a reality beyond the negotiation stage, right? Like I think we're called more for service assignments than otherwise, and that's just how it is. Like when you look at committees, they're heavily female dominated, and chairs of committees are often women. And so how to deal with it, I guess I haven't figured it out, but it's certainly a reality.
Yeah,
Joyce?
Especially on this second position that I was looking for, and to answer Sam's question I see in the chat, it was really important to me that there would be some attempt at life-work balance. And so this was a question that I brought to the interview. I think it is important to feel supported because again, at this end of the day, you want to be happy in that department as well. One thing I think is, I think that oftentimes women will not negotiate their salaries. And like I said, I don't think I would have myself if I was not getting advice from actually my male PhD advisor. And so this is something that I think we all still struggle with. Yeah, I think that sort of plays along the lines of sense of belonging, that no matter where you are in your career, at some point, there's always this little nagging feeling that you've gotta kind of say, hey, no, I belong here, right? And it just doesn't matter where you are, it just keeps coming back. I don't know if you feel the same way, Mariana.
Yeah, I mean, it was part of the deal, and there was a question in the chat that whether you disclose that piece of information, and I did, and it was kind of bailing on this being yourself, right? That was part of my life situation. So if it was going to be a problem with my colleagues, then that's not somewhere that I want to be. And sometimes you don't know how child-friendly places are really. Like, so in my case, I was the first hire in a while that was in the productive age. And so, I ended up bringing my baby to work for like 9 months after she was born. And that was totally fine. But, there was no precedent for that. So just because it's not there doesn't mean that it's not possible. But yeah, it's difficult. It's part of the deal. But yeah.
I also really want to add that I think choosing a place where you feel like you can be your authentic self is incredibly important. And that is part of it, I think, your whatever is going on in your personal life, your experiences, you should feel, there were times when I was a graduate student doing my master's where I had to put this front of who I am to feel like I fit in and things like that. And now where I am and where I was previously in my past position, I feel like I can be completely myself, like my authentic self. And I think that that's really important um, when you're searching for a position for yourself.
There are also data that you can look at, right? I mean, you can look at the last hires, see what is the gender and diversity split of the last hires. You can say like of the last 5 hires, you can look at the department and see whether the demographics of the department feels well balanced in age and representative and in diversity. That tells you also something beyond like the what people can overtly tell you. And what Mariana brings up is it's a huge problem, and it's a huge problem also from the point of view of administrators. The overburdening women and diversity in committees. It's a real problem because if like we all in a way inherited organizations that are inherently male dominated. And so with a very few exception in STEM fields, the departments tend not to be yet fully gender balanced. And so if you have a department with 15 men and 5 women, for instance, you do want your individual committee to be well balanced because you know, for instance, that the job applicants are going to be for majority, at least in neuroscience at this point, or 50-50. And so I do want a search committee to be balanced. But you have very few female faculty, and so you're always going to the same ones. And so it's like in a way, it's a lose-lose proposition. You either lose on the representation end, or you lose on the overburdening end. In reality, you also work it out in conversations and with people and on values, and people understand that. But it's a difficult problem. Okay, so talking about, and I think we have two more like topics that we can talk. One is what are the points when you're at the negotiation stage? What are the things the items that you negotiate? Can you break down what are the requests that you think it makes sense to ask at that stage?
For me, it was summer salary, course release, well, how long the startup can be used. Because we couldn't negotiate on salary too much. Yeah, teaching assignment actually. So you have to be strategic. Some teaching assignments are more honors than others, right? So how often you can repeat the same course. So like once you take a course, are you going to teach it multiple times, or is it going to be multiple different courses for the semesters? So those are the things that I laid out before joining.
Thank you. Bill, I saw that you unmuted yourself earlier.
Well, I think she hit all the points I would
Okay.
have said. So
Yeah, I would add the courses, whether just be mindful of whether you're doing one prep, two preps, or how many preps you're doing, because teaching multiple sections of one course is very different from teaching 4 different courses. The other thing would be, sometimes there are online courses. And so you could also ask whether those are courses that you might be able to teach, how many of your courses could be done that way, as a way to build more time for yourself for research in those early years.
I guess you could also ask about input about how much control you have over the courses that you teach. And so I know at my institution, we're basically like, here's the syllabus if you want it. We can give you more resources, but we'd love you to redesign the course and integrate your research into the laboratory component. So finding out what the teaching and service and research expectations are and making that very clear from the beginning is important.
Then there's the research startup, how much you need to get the startup, whether as part of the startup or separately from the startup, you will have some graduate students that will be supported by the institution. And one of the things that you may get in some research-intensive universities is also whether you can have a year off from teaching and service just to establish the research lab. There are some research operations that are quite complex to set in place, and often you may get exemption from teaching and service just for that. Those are the items that are usually, I think, covered. Is there anything we're missing?
I actually want to add also, it's worthwhile to know if there are any shared or common equipment
Very good point.
that you will be able to utilize.
And sometimes you may not get more startups because often what happens is that the startup funds, the chair and they negotiated them with their dean, and it's a fixed amount, and they may not be able to go back to the dean and ask more. But it may be much easier if there's a shared facility to say, okay, but you could use this microscope for 2 years with a lower fee or with no fee, because that's a little bit more of an internal mechanism often, and it's easier for the chair to have some flexibility about that. Then Alexandra asked, what about lab space and office renovation? Absolutely. So Mariana mentioned that. Ideally, during the visit, at the first visit, you will be shown the space. It's okay to bring up the space, not like early on. You may not want to get necessarily nuts and bolts, but ask, is there a space being designated? Can I ask how much the space is? There a way to potentially sit? And you want to make sure that it's well defined whether renovations are included or not in the startup. If you're told you're going to get X for startup, and then that X value includes renovation, renovations are very expensive. Very expensive. We're all in unionized institutions where putting an air conditioner in a room can cost $60,000, just to give you a sense. And so make sure that when it comes to the time of the negotiation, it's very well spelled out whether the renovation is part of the startup or is done separately. Ask also if, look at the labs, look how they look, and also ask to junior faculty who are in the department whether the renovations were done in time. Because for experimentalists, one of the most unnerving things is that you arrive and it takes a year for your space to be ready. And then and you want to ask the chair, okay, if there is a delay, would that delay be taken into account in my tenure process? That's a very important conversation to have with the chair.
I also forgot to mention relocation expenses, depending on where you're moving to, right? Might be something that you can negotiate.
Okay, so I think we are close to the end. And so before thanking everyone, I would like just to give everyone a chance for 1 or 2 minutes, final thoughts, a final piece of advice that you can give to our participants as they approach the job market. Maybe we can start with I'm going in reverse on the order of my screen, so you will never know what's the order. But Sean, maybe we can you can start.
Oh, you start with me for the hard one first, huh? Give it your all. I mean, just think about everything that you do and what you're bringing to the table. And, as you're thinking through all of that and you're looking at a job description and you think there's something in your background that probably doesn't fit, find a way to make it fit, right? Find a way to make it stand out and make it seem like that's the best thing that you can do. And really just, you I hate saying it, but you're selling yourself, right? So you need to go in there and make people believe that they want you at their institution. And you need to bring the energy. And I know that was a part of these questions, how to keep the energy up there. Do everything you can to make every person on that committee believe that they want to be your colleague.
Joyce, thank you, Sean.
Yep.
I think that when you're looking for a position, it's important that you are yourself, that you present yourself as yourself at the interview, because you want to get along with your colleagues. If the positions that are out there or whatever it is that you decide to take, I know there's a couple of people who are non-traditional or traditional track or looking for local area. Take those opportunities. Take as many opportunities as you can because you really don't know where it's going to lead you. But think about it in terms of building your career. So if the first position isn't perfect, know that you don't have to be eternally locked into it. But make sure that you are building yourself up to a position that you want.
Thank you, Joyce. Bill? Oh, you're muted.
So finding out the culture on that line of Joyce's statement, finding out about the culture of the department is a tricky thing to do. You can get a sense of it from the meetings, and ask about people's interactions with their colleagues. Well, how's their work-life balance? How collegial? You can even ask how collegial is the department, because there's a lot of I consider departments like little fiefdoms. They're all different, and some are really well run, and some have a banana republic with a lunatic dictator. And you really want to know that going to the situation. So maybe ask your colleagues too, if anybody has any interactions with that department. That's important to know. But making sure that it's a right fit for you, not just you're a right fit for them.
Thank you, Bill. And Mariana?
I guess I will end up on an optimistic note and kind of tell you guys to trust the process. It's a very taxing process, very labor intensive on both ends, both the hiring and the candidate. But generally speaking, it works, and you will land in the right place, somewhere that you will be able to have a fulfilling career. And so, have that trust as you're going through the process that if you put your effort in, it will work out.
Okay, so I had one final thought. It was exactly Mariana's thought. It's don't be cynical. Just go through the process, positive, enthusiastic. Don't. I know it's incredibly difficult. Don't overinterpret. Don't linger too much. Immerse yourself in the interview, close. And if it's not a match, it's 90% of the cases is not a negative evaluation on you, but it's someone who was looking for someone studying the moon, and instead you study the sun, and it's just a different match of interest. So don't take it personal. It's not a reflection on who you are, on your skills. It's just a difficult matchmaking process. Remain enthusiastic, remain positive, and project that positivity. And so on these final notes, I would like to thank first all of you. I've seen that the vast majority of you stayed with us for the entire panel, so that's the best endorsement for this. I would like to thank Diane and Lisa for setting this up, and CIE for the incredible job that they always do in our university and in the community. And I would like to thank Sean, Joyce, Bill, and Mariana. And good luck to everyone.
And one last thank you. Thank you, Alfredo, for agreeing to moderate as well.
Oh, it's a
So
pleasure. Thank you very much.
this was fantastic. We will send a follow-up. We will include the recording as well as several resources that were posted within the chat. Thank you, everybody, for joining us and for staying with us for such a long time for this interactive panel. I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for agreeing to join us and to speak to all of our postdocs and graduate students that are here today. So thank you. Have a great day and Happy New
Take
Year.
care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Carrie.
Bye. Thank you.